Live, only on DAZN. Jake Paul versus Chavez Jr. One is defending a name, the other is building one. The ring doesn't care where you come from, only if you can survive in it. Saturday, June 28th, Jake Paul versus Chavez Jr. Buy now at DAZN.com/boxing.
Oscar Bevis for the Stomping Ground, powered by Wow Hydrate and available on DAZN. Hello, Kalle Sauerland.
Good to see you, Os.
What's happening, my mate?
How you, mate?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Always good to be down Wasserman HQ. Weather's nice. I've got my eye on a couple of beers in the fridge once all these interviews are wrapped up.
There's a Guinness tap as well, if you're interested.
I mean, I am interested.
Yeah,
I feel like Guinness gets put away in May, though. It's like an October to May type warm pub.
Yeah, I'm on the iced lattes today, but
for now.
For now, yeah, exactly. How you been?
I've been good, mate. I've been good. Keeping busy. Same old boxing day in, day out. But more importantly, what have you been up to? Even away from boxing, life, holidays, family?
Yeah, no, I mean, look, busy times. We've got a lot of events coming up, a lot of events being planned. Big fight up in Manchester next week. Can't wait to get our teeth into fight week up there. Harlem Eubank taking on Jack Cattrall live on DAZN around the world. And yeah, just working on some August dates and some September dates at the moment, even a couple of October and even November dates. So exciting times. Busy, sort of Q4 schedule, as we call it. So yeah, looking forward to that. Blockbuster on August the 30th in Manchester. Not quite ready to tell you all about it yet, but there's a blockbuster coming to Manchester, Misfits blockbuster. Okay.
Well, I will ask and push as much as I can for the August 30th blockbuster. Just first,
it's going to be good.
It's going to be really good. It's going to be good next week in Manchester as well. You get on with Matchroom. We know that you and Eddie are good friends, but a little bit of an away day for the Wasserman mob.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's it's.
Going up there causing some trouble?
It's sharpening some knives in a proverbial sense, obviously. No, it's a rivalry that goes back many years. You know, we've had lots of head-to-heads with our fighters over the years. You know, crikey, going back to Eddie had Audley Harrison against David A. You know. It was 1-0 for us.
So you like remembering that?
Lost a few as well. We've won a few. You know, it's pretty close. The score's pretty close. I tell you what, on the way up to Manchester, at press conference, they asked me because I'll have that. I'm going to do a head to head. I'm going to take that drive up there, up north, and I'll work on how that stat's looking because it's tight, but.
And if you're winning, you bring it up at the press conference.
We definitely won the better ones. The
bigger ones.
Yeah.
No, I'm really looking forward to that fight. Is it, and this isn't kind of discrediting Harlem at all, because he will come and he will fight, and there's a good chance he comes away with a big victory here, but is it a good time to catch Jack? As weird as that sounds.
Is it a good time for them to catch Harlem? Because Harlem's improving fight to fight. You know, is he at this level yet? We feel so.
Serious momentum the last...
Yeah, I mean, look, they didn't have to take Harlem and we didn't have to take Jack. You know, I think Jack is a terrific fighter, world level, no doubt about that. Absolute world class, real gentleman. Credit to the sport, but that's enough niceties now. You know, we feel we can win the fight, or else we wouldn't have taken the fight. It's a decent payday. It's not, but it's not, you know, life changing. So the motivation here isn't money. It's the glory. So it will come down to the night. You know, obviously his promoter, not his trainer. I would look at it and say, speed is on our side. You know, Harlem's still very fresh. You know, he's not the youngest fighter, but then again, he started much later. And I think I think people look at him and say, how many gears has Harlem got in that motor? And I think there's quite a few that we haven't seen yet. You know, he's risen to all the occasions we've put in front of him. Make no mistake, full respect to Cattrall, this is a step up again. But we've been stepping up through fight. And, you know, going back, what was it now, 4 years ago, signed Harlem on pretty much a round deal, you know, like a mini deal, sort of to have a look at him. He obviously, you know, we're not going to, let's address the elephant in the room. He came with with a certain surname that I'm synonymous with in my career. I mean, worked with many Eubanks and in many different ways and
Big
forms.
sigh there.
No, because I honestly, that whole chapter with Junior, obviously, but also I don't forget, I'm like Senior was one of my idols growing up, watching him. So to work alongside Senior, especially
in the
massive box, mate. This, I'm not in this. I'm obviously in it to earn a living, but I'm also in it to sort of one day look back on a career that I've got something out of emotionally. And I work with one of my heroes, with Senior, and I can, especially the early days with Junior. I mean, Senior, I've just got so much time for him because, he's candid. He's an extrovert. He always has been. I think that's why he was such a successful name in the business. But it was fascinating to work with him. I remember our early meetings, and I was just in awe. The Warriors Code. Hence the fight title next Saturday, I guess, as a bit of a legacy to him. He's got legacy everywhere. I mean, recently the Eubank Ben fight. Let's face it, great fight, super fight. But the popcorn moment, and I'm sure that you asked DAZN and you asked Sky, the pay-per-view numbers, they would have shot up the second Senior stepped out of that car. Yeah, absolutely shot up. That's what the sport's all about. That's what sport in general is all about, is those emotional moments. And, that was real Hollywood stuff. And I, not being involved, but I really enjoyed that moment because, I had great times when they were together, working together. It was great. And, I had some great times with Junior, no grudges born by this scumbag. Excuse the pun. But I know I look back always at the nice times in boxing, because there are always tough times as well. It's a tough sport. Professional sport is tough, and boxing is one of the toughest. So, I look back at with many, many happy memories as well. And I wish Junior nothing but the best. But right now it's Harlem, and I'm looking very forward to that next week.
You're going to be good to see you flying the Eubank flag in Manchester. We will talk about that more next week when it's the actual fight week, because I know I've got quite a few things I want to rattle through. One of them is about KSI. Has he still got that boxing interest? Because this layoff out the ring, I know there's injuries to deal with, but is there still that burning desire to get in the ring and fight? Because in that scene, him fighting is the pinnacle. That's
a
he's
rather
the Don Dada.
personal question, Oscar. I don't know. I mean, ask him. Look,
he is, like I said, he's the Don Dada. He's the one.
You've got to step out of, let's say, your traditional boxing hat or take that traditional boxing hat off and move into the sort of, let's call it the superstar space. I mean, he was performing in front of 90,000 people at Wembley last week, yeah? So, with Will Smith. So, it's like,
it's not normal.
It's what the buzz is of the moment. He's so good at so many different things. And I think it's about the big fights. If it's Conor McGregor, is it Jake Paul, is it, Nate Diaz, what those big names out there, which ultimately will be the fights that that arouse that interest. But it is, it's not like he's just a boxer, and that's not being derogatory to boxers. Who are world champions and aspiring to be British champions or whatever it is their road is in. He's got multiple careers, so it's about that moment of feeling the right fight, but he is a man of many talents, and that's just the way it is, and so it's about the right fights, I guess. But again, it's a question that is quite personal. I'd ask him that question.
I'm sure I won't get the most open response from him if I was to ask him that question. I've found JJ one of the most straight shooting people, and I think that's part of he's so authentic. He don't bullshit. He just cuts straight to the chase, and so I think he just sort of wear his heart on his sleeve. He often shocks me with some of the things he says. Often he announces stuff. I've got no idea it's going out when it comes to boxing stuff in the past. So, and that's, I think,
his excitability for us all, that's why he's got so many fans and followers all over the world, is excitability, is the unpredictability of what's next, you know.
Could you ever see him in the ring with Darren Till?
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's a fight that could get made, yeah. I mean, you know, Darren's doing his thing at the moment, and I think there's a few big fights out there for Darren, you know, outside of KSI or Jake Paul, and, you know, so you know, there's lots of very, very interesting storylines out there.
One from Liam Cameron?
Liam
That
Cameron
was a bit of a shock to see that talk.
Liam Cameron. No, I think Liam Cameron, Ty Mitchell is a great fight. That's a great fight. That's a fight I'd like to try and make, actually.
Especially when you've got Ty wanting
I think that's
Ben Whittaker in the future. There's a comparison to be made.
I think that's a cracking fight. I think that gets a lot of eyeballs. I think, I mean, you know, Carl Froch calling out Darren Till recently. I think that's a blockbuster in the making as well. There's lots of different things that can happen with Darren Till. He's a very exciting fighter, very exciting personality. Just talked about unpredictability. You never know which Darren Till's going to turn up. But he's great fun to work with.
Yeah, he's certainly one of them we've got to keep our camera on at all times.
Yeah,
you never know
just
what
never
might happen.
know what's going to happen next with Darren Till.
I.e. the Tommy Fury press conference.
But again, that's I mean, you know, let's not talk too much about the Tommy Fury chapter, but he sort of wears his heart on his sleeve, doesn't he? There's a lot of excitability around it.
Yeah, I know there was a little exchange on Twitter between him and Rocky Fielding. He said, look, if I'm being honest, Rocky, we could sell out the Echo, and it's a big fight for Liverpool, but I want a pay-per-view fight, one that outside of Liverpool and perhaps stateside, people are going to go, yeah, I'm paying for that. Do you agree with Darren in that sense? I mean, like, I think Darren and Rocky's a big fight.
Yeah, I think it's a big fight. You know, big fight. So I've put on a few big fights in my time, and unfortunately, to make a big fight, you've got to look at what it can generate. So if it's just a Liverpool fight, I mean, the payday I could offer him would be probably, you know, I think both would say, no, Kalle, you know, that's not enough. So if it was just a Liverpool fight, with all due respect, that wouldn't quite crack it. You know, Misfits is a global platform, you know, more global than anything I've ever seen in traditional boxing. I just look at the pay-per-views and I see, you know, countries, India, for example, it's done really well in India in terms of sales. That's certainly never been on any of my traditional boxing. You know, when you do a pay-per-view, you get the breakdown of where the buyers have come in from, or what countries you've managed to sell the event to, and India's never been up there. Just a random example, but you can see, you know, the success of Misfits isn't based on the UK or Liverpool or a certain city. It's based on you know, global numbers. It's a truly global platform.
Yeah, one person who's doing big global numbers is Jake Paul. Does he beat Chavez Jr. this weekend?
It's a tough fight.
Is it his toughest fight to date?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's definitely his toughest fight to date. Definitely his toughest fight to date. I think that Chavez, it depends which Chavez turns up. I think we were talking about to Chavez earlier in the year about fighting KSI. And I looked at it and I was like, okay, we were going to go for it. It wasn't, the timings didn't work out. But before we went in there, I had a good look at him, because you've got to remember the guy's had 60-odd fights, yeah? And at a pretty high level, yeah? Obviously, the later fights, the higher the level. But it's a live contender. He's lived a bit of a La Vida Loca outside the ring, no doubt about that. How's that told on him? But it's one of those spaces where, you know, Jake Paul's got to go and beat him, you know, and the pressure will be on Jake Paul. At the same time, apparently Chavez, what I've heard, has sort of turned his life around, and, you know, this is obviously a payday, but he's not going to get another payday out of it, so that will depend very much on him winning. So I don't expect him to to be taking a knee early. No, you know, he'll go out Mexican style if he does go out. So no, it's a good fight. I'm looking forward to watching it.
Yeah, all them names I mentioned, you could literally pick 5 or 6 of them and put 2 of them against each other. It's a big fight. When we mentioned Carl Could you ever see Cole getting back in the ring?
I could see Cole getting back in the ring when he's 90 years
extortionate
old.
Price, though?
I don't think I've worked.
Do you think it takes, like, we're talking big?
I think I'll be honest with you, Carl Froch, right? And I've worked with but against Carl on so many fights. You know, the Kessler fight, the second Kessler fight, the Abraham fight, all through the Super Six, George Groves Part 2 at Wembley Stadium in front of 80,000 people, Carl.
Did you let Canelo know the other day?
Yeah, exactly. Let everyone know that which he's got actually a fantastic sense of humour. Yeah? It's a proper dry. But one thing I could see Carl having around when he's 80. Yeah? I mean, he is like, he's got that about him where you know he's ready to go at any time, and I think it's a brilliant quality. I don't know, is it brilliant? Am I allowed to say that it's brilliant quality?
It's a brilliant quality for you because you're a promoter.
Yeah, I know, but I remember there was definitely a quote back in the day. If I see Kalle Sauerland down a dark alley, I'll dig that quote up. It was around the time of the first Kessler fight, and I'm reading it thinking, crikey, yeah, well, I know fighters say it a lot, but actually I think Cole sort of means it. Yeah, so it's like, I definitely would see Cole getting into a tear up in a ring again. Yeah, for sure. I know he's had I think he had his nose done and stuff, but you know, there's enough money to go around to pay for another one. You know, so yeah, do I see Cole getting into a ring again? I think I think obviously it depends on the finances and stuff, but I think he's made enough money to be very comfortable. So I don't think it's just a financial decision. I think it's more about, you know, Cole, something tickles Cole still, that's for sure. There's something out there, whereas he wouldn't still be so in touch and so emotional about certain subjects, yeah? AJ.
Do you like his videos?
Yeah,
you can't not. They're so watchable, aren't they?
They're so watchable. They're so, you know, and Cole has always been very opinionated. Sometimes you agree with him, sometimes you don't. But you can't help but watch, and I guess that's why he's getting big numbers on YouTube.
Do you agree or disagree heavily, partly with the AJ finish?
I agree with some of it. Some of it, no, I think it's always a very personal thing for a fighter to call it a day. I also know as a promoter, you definitely, you know, you don't. You're not first of all, you're not in a position to say, right, it's time to call it a day, because that's the people around him, that's his family, that's his advisors, that's whatever. You know, you can say your piece on it, but you're not going to change his mind. You're going to say, carry on or don't carry on. Generally, I've never had a fighter who would ask me that question. I don't think I've had a fighter who would listen to me on that question, because as a promoter, you are still put on big events. That's what you do. Yeah? You then go down to the you know, people say, oh, the health and safety of it. Well, okay. But which is always the most important thing. But you are then reliant on medical professionals, which we, again, are not, right? So we might all have an opinion, but it's down to medical professionals to give a boxer an all clear. So I'd say, you know, I get what Carl's saying, but at the same time, you know, it'll be people around AJ and AJ himself who ultimately who makes that decision. It's AJ, you know. But is it popcorn watching him and Eddie go back and forth? Absolutely.
What do you think would happen
especially knowing, like, having worked with the pair of them for the Kessler fight, the Groves fight, yeah, it is for me, especially. I've got like this personal fucking storyline there with them, and it does make me laugh. Yeah, it is funny.
What do you
but
think
by the way, I think Eddie enjoys it. I think Carl
100%.
Eddie loves the social view. We all know that. Eddie knows that himself. Eddie will be the first to admit that himself. And Carl's platform's only growing for it as well. So they'll both be looking at it and thinking, right, this is doing a trick as well. Yeah. But I do believe it's genuine. Yeah, I think Carl definitely is saying his piece, what he believes, and you Yeah, and Eddie's sort of got to go and protect his charge and his decisions, I guess.
Well, I was going to say, I feel like Cole and Eddie is a bit more perhaps jovial. What do you think would happen if, and at some point I guess they will, because the boxing circle is it's not a big circle, it's quite a small family. Cole and AJ cross paths. Does it get hairy, or is it just, does AJ go, actually I know this guy's doing it because it's generating 100,000 views per video, or does he go, actually, do you know what? You're saying quite personal stuff about
AJ, by the way, has changed massively. You go look at the first part of JJ's career. He was very, very media, very, he was the people's person. He's definitely found the nasty side, that edge, and that certainly when he lost the belt, that certainly has been you can see it from the outside. There's been a mental change in his approach, and I like it because it's, it seems like a bit more, that's a real, he's got that sort of venomous side, which we've seen in the ring, but he's like, now he's sort of wearing his heart on his sleeve. Even that moment in Saudi Arabia when he shut the belt showed how much it meant to him, I've seen those meltdowns so many times with fighters in changing rooms afterwards. So it's not like people say, oh, yeah, these breakdown in the ring. I said, yeah, the breakdown happened. But it happens after, look at any sport. How many times you heard of tennis players smashing up a locker room, and not just John McEnroe, because they've lost, because that's what they do. They're born winners, right? So to lose for them is everything. And I've taken a bit of a tangent here, haven't I? I think both would stand their ground, and that's the problem you have. AJ's got the size advantage, but Carl's spiteful, so it'd be an interesting one. I think everyone else would step right back. There would be no one trying to get in the middle of that.
Even the security.
Everyone would just step back. It'd be like one of those fights I remember fights back in the day in the schoolyard where, there were certain fights you knew to step back and that circle would form, and everyone would chant, fight, fight, fight. And I can imagine that scene. But no, joking aside, let's hope that doesn't come to that, because they're both great ambassadors for the sport.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought you were going to ask me what's going to happen when Darren Till and Carl Froch cross paths.
Well, now that is
live.
That's volatile.
That's live, and that's one where I'm not taking a step back. I'm leaving the building, right? In fact, I might leave the city. No, that would be, because again, both don't take a step back. It would be, So listen, that fight again, that's blockbuster stuff.
Yeah, I'm all in for Darren Till versus Carl Froch. How could you not be? I've got to ask you about this Eubank Jr. sauna situation. Is it kind of like an unwritten rule that, fighters use saunas, but you don't tell everyone about it? Is that a fair assessment, or?
Yeah, I think
not the first. He won't be the last, but it was very public on.
First of all, everything from now on, I am not a medical professional, and I am certainly not in a position to advise of sauna usage. What I have got is I'm 48 years old. I was born into a boxing family. I've been around boxers as babysitters as a kid. I've had gyms in our house where fighters have trained for fight camps. I've been around fighters my whole life. Yes, fighters often use saunas. I'm not saying in a legal way to the board. I mean, there's no rule against using a sauna during your fight camp as part of your training. It's about the deliberate weight cut. Does it happen? Absolutely. Do they use baths? Absolutely. Do they use other methods? Absolutely. Then you get into the grey area of what actually in 2025, because I said 48 years, 1977, when I was born, it was certainly there was only one type of sauna. Now you've got Finnish saunas, you've got, infrared, which is the classic sauna, you've got the infrareds, which have a totally different effect on the person. You've got sauna blankets. So what about sauna suits? You've got sauna suits, that... I think anything on a weight cut which is dramatic in fight week is extremely harmful for the fighter. Again, I'm not a medical professional, so I don't think it's just saunas. I think that's an old school view on it. I think that's something that generally has to be looked at. There's got to be a different definition of what a sauna actually is, because those are rules that were put in place many moons ago, correct rules. But at the same time, until when? Like there's a definition of when a sauna is used, what type of sauna, how it's used. It's unfortunately got to get a bit more technical than just saying, sauna usage around making weight, because that something that needs to be looked at. That's for sure.
Yeah. Moving on to Boxer and Ben Shalom and the Sky deal will not be renewed. I know you guys are pulling in big numbers in the seven figures, millions for fights on Channel 5. We don't know the future of Sky and what they're going to do. We believe it's going to be, I guess, cherry picking certain fights and certain nights. Is there any interest from your side in doing work with Sky Sports to put Wasserman Sauerland shows on the platform?
I mean, does the Pope pray? No, but seriously, ask that question a bit differently. I mean, Sky is, the most historic great seat of in British boxing. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. But at the same time, I think people overcook the situation, and I'm not going to point any fingers there, but it's been referred to as a partnership. Then my idea of a partnership is that Sky's got some vested interest into Boxer. Sky, as far as I understand it, I haven't seen the contracts, but it's a rights deal. Yeah, I've been involved on a promotional front for pretty much 27 years now. Yeah, and I've done big output deals with American broadcasters, long-term deals, German broadcasters, public broadcasters, Scandinavian broadcasters, British broadcasters, obviously, and they're just rights deals. They come to an end, and you either renew or you don't renew. So, the fact that things weren't too rosy in the garden, I think, is not like a big secret. Yeah, there's been lots of different things that have happened in the 4 years that, you could look in from the outside that, certainly things weren't working the way it was planned. And that's sports business. That happens. And they've just, looks like they've not decided not to renew a rights agreement. So it's like, okay, we make a big thing of it in boxing. License agreements very often in sports rights, in the sports rights world, outside of boxing, they very often aren't renewed. So I wouldn't read too much into it like that. They just, I think that it's very early in the day, though, to say who's going to go into Sky and whatever, and what Sky's strategy is. Sky is very important for the whole of British boxing, and actually for global boxing in a way, given that the UK is one of the predominant markets. So Sky's decision is really important, So, I guess unselfishly, I look at it and just hope they stay in boxing. Yeah? They have great people at Sky that have been, I've had a working relationship. I've done loads of pay-per-views with Sky. And over the last few decades, going back David Hay days, George Groves, or obviously Eubank Jr. in more recent times. But the team at Sky itself, they're extremely knowledgeable and they're good people to have around boxing because they also bring in Sky Sports News. That bring in the eyeballs of football fans and cricket fans and everything else that makes boxing mainstream, and other broadcasters indirectly rely on that as well. And it's a really important flag to uphold. The likes of Ed Robinson, Andy Scott, they've been around the sport for decades. These are very knowledgeable people. But I remember my first press conference with Andy Scott was like in Denmark a couple of, it must have been 15 years ago now. I remember him as a younger Andy Scott, and they've grown into the sport, and they just
commentating on Riyadh season cards for Sky.
But it's literally so that the knowledge is so there, and you don't find that with a lot of broadcasters around the world. So Sky isn't just about being a broadcaster for so in the last 4 years with Boxer. They've been super important for Wasserman Boxing, for Matchroom, for Queensberry. Because we had last week we had Harlem in there. I went in there recently. I did a thing with Sky Sports News, just talking about boxing generally. How important that is people just forget. So everyone's like, "Oh, the rights deal at Sky." By the way, word on the street is the rights deal's not even finished yet until the end of this month. So, Yes, love to throw my hat into it, but right now I'll send out my CV. I've certainly got the experience, and I think Sky's a great platform. There you go. That's my application. But joking aside, now it's very early in the day. Yeah, they're still technically under contract, what I've heard, with Boxer. So, again, it's a rights deal. It's not. People think that Sky have gone and developed a boxing promotion platform. As I know, it's not. It's a rights deal. They got a lot of dates off Sky in 4 years. It's rights deal, and now it's not been extended. So it's from that point of view. It's Sky Sports and the Sky company, who, by the way, Wasserman work with in so many different other sports, will look at it and they'll have a very sort of sober view on it in terms of what they're going to do next. But important for everyone in boxing is that Sky stay in boxing, whoever that is with and however that is.
Live, only on DAZN, June 28th. Jake Paul versus Chavez Jr. Buy now at DAZN.com/boxing.